And we'll get into it today, but we will be discussing why we will be shifting away from that and doing episodes that are just more Iman and I dissecting Lindy books, and episodes which you will be able to come back to and listen decades from now. Something that will be more meaningful. Our children's children will be able to listen to and marvel at how phenomenal we were. So, but before we get into all of that stuff, Iman, what's new?
You know what is new? You know how you started this podcast by saying we might be a little bit rusty?
Yeah.
Your haircut's looking rusty, bro.
All right, let's get in. It's looking the rustiest it's ever been, and I think I need to see, for the first time in my life, I'm opening up to the idea of therapy, because it's caused me so much mental. Basically, as you know, or as people may know, I'm in mainland Europe, and it's not hard to figure out, if you know me or follow me, where I am. And my biggest sort of worry with leaving the UK, or specifically London, for a while, was leaving my phenomenal, best of the best Greek Cypriot barber, Steve, who is so good. He has like a 3-week waiting time. And I just get in the chair. I just say, do whatever you want. And he gives the best haircuts in the world. And that doesn't exist here. An osteopath doesn't exist. So if your neck or shoulder freezes up from overhead press or some compound lifts or whatever, in the UK, every 6 weeks, 4 weeks, I'd see an osteo. It's good for upkeep general. There's none of that. You're getting bored, you're yawning, but I'll continue. There's also in the UK, you know, you and I would eat things like 5% fat steak mince. It's the little things that matter. Here, that doesn't even exist. Everything's 20% plus fat, and it literally says the protein content of this is no more than 15%. So they got it reversed. So me and you would be like, it needs to be high protein, low, like 5% fat. It's the reverse here. So everything's fucked, but, well, not everything's fucked. Everything's great, but those things that matter to me, which are, you know, the GTL lifestyle, the nutrition, the haircuts, the osteo that helps the lifting, all of the bro stuff are basically, they suck, but everything else is phenomenal. The nature's very good. It's very peaceful. And I went into the city the other day, which after 2 hours, I was like, fuck this. I can't handle city life anymore after spending my whole life in London. And then when you come back into the nature and the peaceful, because I'm like pretty much in the middle of a forest, just it's awesome. Yeah, I love it.
That's the price you pay for Lindy, because...
But yeah, sorry, before you continue, please, we're going to start a GoFundMe so we can fly my Greek Cypriot barber, Steve, on a private jet to my location once every 3 weeks for the fresh skin fade. We'll probably have a link in the show notes for this GoFundMe, but please continue.
It'll be cheaper for you to get a flight back to London and get a haircut.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, this is the only reason I explained to you before, the only reason I want to obtain FU money is just to fly out Steve the barber, and you know, that's that. But please continue.
No, you the price you've paid for living a Lindy lifestyle is, you're not going to get the GTL barbers, you're not going to get the lifting, exactly. You know, added benefits of things that sit around the lifting lifestyle.
Correct.
But it is what it is. You get Lindy. you get Lindy walks in the fucking forest, don't you?
How'd you fucking? So yeah, that is price you got to pay for Lindy.
So let's explain why we've changed track and trying to do something a little bit different with podcasts. We've done a lot of strategizing, thinking through what the future looks like, what we need to focus on, what we enjoy doing, what we think the sort of listeners and watchers resonate with most. All of this stuff has gone into our thinking. Who's our target audience, you know, what we enjoy, like the level of analysis and detail that we like to go into in certain things versus not in other things, and trying to keep everything Lindy. All of those sort of areas have been taken into account, and we've decided what we actually really enjoy doing is thinking about core concepts that emerged from really what we term Lindy, but basically evergreen books that you could pick up in 100 years and it'd still be valuable. And talk about those things in the context of, business, investing, venture, startup, whatever it is, still using those concepts and bringing them to life for people. But do you want to explain some of the thinking that you had maybe that took us from thinking about this stuff to actually taking the plunge and, getting to that tipping point?
I know I like to read out tweets, but I'll limit it to one tweet this episode. It's a transition episode. I tweeted a while back as we were thinking about a lot of things. I mean, before I even get to this all started because Iman and I obviously, all of this stuff is side projects for us. It's you could call it a passion project. Absolutely love doing this. If I had obtained a few money at this point, I would be doing podcasting a lot more. We were saying to each other, like, we had secured some huge guests, which I've tweeted about, and some are even recorded in the vault, not released, probably won't release, we'll see. And we were speaking with each other, talking about how frustrating it is and not very enjoyable to bring on a lot of guests, because I'll name a few guests we had, which I tweeted about before as well, but it doesn't really get any bigger in the tech, VC, venture, startup space. Jason Calacanis agreed to come on, Shervin Pishavar, Sahil Lavingia of Gumroad, among others. And we've got some eps in the vaults, as I said, won't release, but point being, dealing with these caliber of people, most people would say, wow, you've made it. Like, this is it in your startup, like venture podcast space. The guests don't get any bigger, basically. To which I would agree. However, I'm talking to you as a consumer, Iman, now of podcasts. You go onto your YouTube subscription to your Spotify podcast or whatever. How many fucking podcasts do you see uploaded every day, every week? You just don't have the time to listen to. You scroll past, and very, very, very few of them you're like, wow, like I need to listen to that because it's going to serve me well in my personal life, in my work. It's evergreen. It's something I can come back to and keep listening, take notes of, rather than, I don't know, Jason Calacanis does his 25th interview on someone else's podcast, or Sahil Lavingia does his 100th interview on another podcast. And there are only so many things you can ask. Yes, being a great interviewer, you do 20 hours of research, as we have done on some episodes, go and dig out some very special information or whatever, questions that have never been asked. And then their reaction is, wow, I've never been asked that. You're a great interviewer. And then you get a boner for 2 seconds. It's like, so what? And then no one really listens to that. Maybe a few, like you'll have a couple thousand or whatever listens. Or regardless, you might have millions of listens, but it doesn't serve. It's not something that people come back to. And it's beyond this episode. We will talk about in the episodes where we talk about Taleb's work, but why, it's sort of becoming a meme synonymous with us, the whole concept of Lindy, but how important it is for everything, or as many things as you can, to be Lindy, to strive for Lindy. In this case, because the content, as I said, your kids will be able to listen to. It's something, a lot of the information of Lindy books from hundreds of years ago or decades ago will still be relevant, generations after us, and it's more meaningful to us for people to be able to come back to that. On top of, yes, it's awesome to meet people, go through phases of life and things change. When we started the podcast, it was for selfish reasons of, we want to meet interesting, high caliber people. When people ask me, let's just grab a coffee or let me pick your brain, it's just like F off. And you'd expect these big shots to say the same thing, but human beings love to talk about themselves. So when you invite them on a podcast with the right pitching and inviting them the right way, they say yes. And you develop a relationship, as we have done with probably over 80% of the guests, who become friends. You do deals together, whatever. So it's great in that regard, but life changes. You go through different phases. And this is a phase where I just find it very boring speaking to guests. On top of it's a full-time job just to like deal with the scheduling and all of that shit, which people think is easy. It's just one email. But when you're dealing with like billionaires or big shots, it's just so much back and forth with like the admin team, the EAs in some cases. and it just becomes a ball ache. Whereas when it's Iman and I, firstly, we've had a lot of the positive feedback we've had, and general feedback is people prefer the episodes when it's just you and I chopping it up. And secondly, it's just much easier. We can just hop on like now. It's like a Sunday morning, hopping on, recording on our own. Like it's always been about autonomy and freedom and fun. So that basically ticks all of those boxes. And so just to wrap up this whole monologue, the tweet which I was referring to, and the other reason we came to this decision, we'll put it up on the screen, but I tweeted, recipe for podcast success, in my opinion. Firstly, choose a niche, but not too niche, a la Founders Podcast by David Sendra, Acquired Podcast, or Invest Like the Best by Patrick O'Shaughnessy. Number 2, make Lindy quality content, say biography dissection or 3-hour specials on a company's history. This serves as a mini audiobook that will still be relevant many years from now, never expires. Number 3, avoid distractions and shiny objects. Focus on the above, not obsessing over book deals or essays or YouTube or TikTok or angel investments or syndicates or whatever. Next point, do it for a very long time consistently. Let it compound, of course. Next point, quality over quantity, or in the case of Senra, both. And all of this is why VC podcasts are boring. The above podcasts that I mentioned are actually interesting and timeless, very bullish on the brands above. Most podcasters like to hit record with a little prep and talk about the latest thing. Few are willing to spend 20 plus hours prep for each hour of recording. As always, the future belongs to those who not only carve out the time, but have a high, deep work rate in that time. Iman and I have been discussing for a while now the long-term direction of the show. We are in it for the long term. Once I can get my head above water to breathe, we'll be doing much deeper episodes following a model similar to the one outlined above. We have a few more very good guest episodes in the vault to get out, which I don't think we'll be getting out at this point. But after that, we're even potentially considering a rebrand. We'll leverage Twitter to build in public and get people's views as time goes on, blah, blah. So yeah, I'll pass it over to you to add your input.
I mean, I think you've covered a lot of it. There's 2 books that come to mind that cover what we're talking about. The first one is, well, I don't know if it's a book or something that he's spoken about with 1,000 True Fans from Kevin Kelly. What's quite interesting about what he says in that book is the era of the mass-produced consumer good is kind of over. And as a result, people expect to feel some sort of personal connection to a brand. It probably explains why we're seeing a lot of influencers garner a lot of power and growth in the business world. You could just look at like the Paul brothers and KSI as like creating their own brands on the back of their influencer value. You have that element. And then what Kelly talks about in 1,000 True Fans is that you build a direct relationship. So you want to be as authentic as possible. And what that actually does is it creates a manageable group of people for you to target. So you can talk to them directly. You can, engage with them directly, whether that's through Twitter or another channel. You can do Q&As with them, all of that good stuff. And what that creates for you is a manageable and monetizable group. Not that we would necessarily want to monetize, but the community that you create is quite valuable. The second book that kind of influences our thinking here is, I don't know if it's just to this pod or generally in life, but it's The One Thing by Gary Keller. What's interesting about this is simplifying your workload is probably one of the most important things you can do because it gives you focus on specific topics or whatever. And I think it was it Cal Newport? Or maybe it's the latest Paul Graham essay that I read. Was it How to Do Great Work?
Yeah, Paul Graham. Where
they talk about, and this covers again, take a shot Naval, but finding something that feels like play to you but looks like work to others. And what I'm trying to get at is this combination of focusing on one thing, but making sure that one thing is something that you find interesting, that can be scalable, and that is niche. In fact, Patrick O'Shaughnessy, I pull up a tweet, Patrick O'Shaughnessy put a tweet referencing Paul Graham's essay where he talks about this. And he says, finding something that's not normal, that's weird, that other people would not be interested in, but that you can talk about for hours and bore people about, is something that you should find for yourselves. And I think between the two of us, we have that within the realm of talking about Lindy books and understanding how those concepts apply to life today. So taking all of that together, you've got creating a group and a community, which is the Kevin Kelly model, at a small level. You've got the Paul Graham sort of Naval view of find something you really enjoy and that's scalable. And then you've got the model of focusing only on one thing, which is the Keller model. And if you bring all those things together, you get a concoction, which is what we're trying to do. So trying to create only one thing, which is the podcast, and growing that, focusing on areas that we enjoy, where, we may start with Taleb and then go on to Munger and then talk about Ben Graham or whoever it is, right? So we'll be able to deep dive into these areas that we really find interesting, and only focusing on that. So not trying to boil the ocean with trying to get loads of people on the podcast, trying to do investments. Look, sure, all of these things may continue, but they won't be the sole focus of our brand. I think that covers basically the sort of points that you were raising, but in a more holistic fashion.
Yeah, and I mean, Samir Kaji said this to us. He said, if you're not having fun, what's the point? And we've kind of done the guest phase now. We're done with that. I don't really enjoy it anymore. I did at the time. And if you have, as I said, if day job and career and all of that wasn't a concern, we'd obtained FU money in the way that Taleb talks about it, just be doing podcasts all the time with you. I find this is extremely fun, and it's what's going to continue anyway on the side, and may potentially turn into the main gig at some point. Who knows? But yeah, I think focus is key, and everyone's trying to do too many things at once. I mean, with you want to talk about David Senra. He has money thrown at him all the time to start a fund, and he says no. And that's partially the reason his pod's doing so well, because he just locks himself in a room, reads a book really well, and then just does a pod every week. In our case, as I said, and as you outlined, it's going to be Lindy books. So we're going to start from episode 50, the next episode, which is a good number to start on. Whenever anyone says, let's go check out the pod, we'll just say from episode 50 is the new format. It's easy to remember. Episode 50 will be fooled by randomness, and then the next few episodes will be each Taleb book. Episode 55, 56, probably be Paul Charlie's Almanac. And then after that, maybe some of Richard Feynman's work. And then after that, it's just whatever. It's Lindy books from the past decades or centuries, or maybe even books that are over 1,000 years old, in some cases. And that's what we'll be discussing. It'll be in the same format as you guys have probably listened to in the past episodes where Iman and I just discussed, we had a few episodes, the 25 anti-mimetic tactics for living a countercultural life, or Taleb's principles, whatever. We've done a bunch of episodes where it's just the two of us. We have a lot of fun and we have great feedback on those. People seem to enjoy those a lot more. So yeah, that's what we will be doing. Maybe once every 30, 40 or 50 episodes, who knows, we'll have the odd guest where it's a very special episode. So the only one that springs to mind for now is, the North Star is, of course, Taleb, who we have quite a few mutual contacts with, but I'll save that for, we'll save that for the long term. It's not something I want to do now myself. I think we need to do a ton of episodes on his body of work. But one person that springs to mind is Daniel Vassallo, who is basically he lives by all of the Taleb books, the Inserto series, put it into practice. So, and he's a software engineer who's worked in tech and the whole thing. So maybe in the next 20 or 30 episodes, we'll have him on, but that's the only thing that springs to mind. And that's more talking about, rather than doing another interview with Daniel Vassallo, it'll be more about Taleb's principles from his perspective and how he's applied them, which is more relevant to the body of work we'll be covering from Taleb in the next episode. So basically, rarely any guests. Every episode is one Lindy book. Cadence, we'll see, probably For now, it'll be once a month. In the new year, increasing to once every 2 weeks, definitely. And then as and when schedules allow, we will try and get more aggressive to once a week, but we can't promise that at the moment. It'll be one a fortnight. But yeah. Anything else you want to touch on?
I think you've covered basically everything. The one thing to note is that our essays have garnered a lot of attention and interest over the last couple of years. And actually, a lot of the value that's been driven through, by our brand, or a lot of the value that we've seen as a result of our brand, I should say, has come because we do these deep dive, really intricate, oftentimes, personally relevant essays. The Rational Letter it's called, and we have quite a we have a fair few amount of subscribers to this channel. What we're trying to do is, still when inspiration strikes, if you will, come up with the essays, write some detailed stuff, and I've got a whole bunch of things bubbling in my mind that I want to put down on paper. So that will continue. However, the cadence will probably be different, as you will have seen if you are a subscriber. And on top of that, it's probably going to be repositioned. So we're probably going to use that platform to share more of the learnings that we take from the one thing, which is the podcast, and the learnings that we're taking from these Lindy books. And that might not be in long form. It might be a very short email that we send out. And it's just another way of getting to our target audience and sharing our thoughts around the one thing, which is, in the first instance, going to be fooled by randomness, but also is going to probably pick up on this at some point, which is a hefty book I've started reading, Statistical Consequences of Fat Tails, which is Taleb's latest book, which, by the way, if you don't understand statistics, is fucking hard to understand. But the point I'm trying to raise is essays will still continue. They'll just be a combination of things emerging in your inbox. It won't just be the long form essays that we usually send out.
Yep. Basically, everything's getting stripped back, just podcasts. Every episode is on a dissection of a Lindy book where the two of us chat. And then at the end of that podcast, we summarize our learnings in a very, very brief email that we send to subscribers. So we're not creating new work or new essays because, as I said, the reason we kind of got overwhelmed, strapped for time, focusing on day jobs, day careers. And yeah, so that's that. It'll be just repurposing what we talk about on the podcast, but in a summarized version you can read on the go. And that's, of course, at rationalvc.com, where, you can subscribe and you'll get that in your inbox. So anything else?
No, hopefully by the next episode, you will have found a barber or Steve will have flown out, or you will have flown here and got Steve to sort you out. And
I'm thinking just to do a buzz cut, to be honest. Just clean shave the face like the banking days and buzz cut the top of the head. Just basically look like one of my cousins back home. And that's that.
Shave the head, but keep the beard. Yeah, completely shave the head.
I think, I've seriously, how important this is for me. I think once I obtain this citizenship, because, collecting a portfolio of passports is important. But once I obtain the citizenship, I will be coming back to the UK solely for Steve the Barber and Ocado delivery. Those two things only. But everything else here is actually much better. But those two things are so important that it's the little things, It's not the infrastructure or the cost of living or like quality of life or nature or happiness. It's Steve the Barber giving me a skin fade that's the most important thing in life.
I'm about to go and get a haircut in about an hour, and it is the best. Walking out of the barbershop,
it's best for you.
Straight out. It's the best.
Have you seen that meme of the guy, the big guy in the US? He goes into the shop with his head down, proper shy, doesn't know what he's lost.
He's a famous NFL player. Fuck, I've forgotten his name, but
no way.
He's a famous NFL player. He retired and then he started. This is the whole thing around the Kevin Kelly 1000 True Fans. He was a superstar, but scaled back his reach by doing influencer funny videos, and that actually ironically made him bigger. But yeah, anyway, he's. Yeah,
so I didn't even know he's an NFL guy.
Yeah. He's a famous baller.
Okay, well. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, rationalvc.com. We may actually, last thing, this potential rebrand that we speak of. Happy to hear people's thoughts on this. It will not be a huge rebrand. The name will either remain as Rational VC, or we'll just drop the VC and it will be Rational. So Rational Podcast. And yeah, let us know your thoughts. Open to discussions, because the VC thing doesn't really serve us. You go back and forth. On one angle, I'm like, okay, the VC name, you don't want to disrupt the compounding. That's, people associate that with us. You know, you want to keep that going. But then again, we don't really associate with VC in any way. Our podcasts are going to be, you know, dissecting Lindy books, things you can apply in your work and life. And all sorts of people will listen. Investors, founders, engineers, erudites, scientists, whatever. So we're not really in the VC game. We've been thinking about potentially just dropping the VC. And we do have some cool domains as backup. We have rational.fm and rational.llc. We, of course, still have the rational.fund, and syndicates. We'll still do some deals, but maybe 1, 2, or 3 deals a year. We won't be focusing on deal flow or startup investing as much. Literally just podcasts. So anyway, let us know your thoughts on potential rebrand. We're thinking maybe just calling it Rational. And yeah, next episode 50, will be the new format.